Welcome to FFT and 5. I'm Chris Towers. I'm here with Dave Richard, and we're here to talk about the biggest draft needs for the NFC South, every team in there. And the answer is quarterback. So thanks for listening to Fantasy Football Today in 5. Sorry, no, that's oversimplifying just a little bit. The Saints don't.
FFT in 5 seconds.
They just got Derek Carr. Everybody else probably needs a quarterback. We'll start with the Saints, since that's the least obvious answer. What do you think is the biggest need for the Saints heading into the NFL draft from a fantasy perspective?
Well, I don't know what they necessarily need for this season. They've got quarterback covered. They've got wide receiver covered, maybe. Tight end, they seem to be good there. Running back is where I'm going to lead you, Chris, because Alvin Kamara, 28 years old, could face a suspension. We don't know what his availability will be to start the season. And they added Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams is also 28 years old. So this is a team that needs to find an answer at running back who can help them once these guys turn 29 or 30. Potentially both of them won't be on the roster next year. I'm curious to see what the Saints do about that position.
Yeah, I know Jahmyr Gibbs, in talking to Emery Hunt earlier in the week, we did some NFL draft player comps, and his comp for Gibbs was Alvin Kamara. So if you want to keep the bus running, that might be a situation where, we saw this when Kamara was a rookie. They had Mark Ingram. They brought in Adrian Peterson. And Kamara was so good early on that they ended up just kind of blowing up the room and handing him the job. But, it's a situation where they've been there before. They've drafted the next running back while the other guys were still on the roster. That could be a situation that we see the Saints do. And obviously, we do expect Kamara to miss some time this year. So there would be an opportunity for another running back, especially a pass-catching playmaker, something that Jamal Williams is not, to make an impact there. So that's one to keep an eye on. Let's move on to the Panthers, who obviously they are going to take a quarterback with the number 1 overall pick. Either Bryce Young or CJ Stroud sounds like the likely option, but do you think that's it, or do you think there are other needs here that they'll look into?
They're a team that's old at wide receiver. So I think they're kind of in the same vein as the Saints at running back, Carolina at wideout. They need to find a go-to guy for their new quarterback. And it might be asking a little bit too much for them to find that go-to wide receiver at 39th overall, but they still have that pick in round 2. And what they might be able to do is, if let's just say someone like Zay Flowers or Jordan Addison slips out of round 1, and there's a different day for round 2.
Yep.
Carolina might get on the phone with Pittsburgh. They've got the top pick of round 2, and they might offer a nice package to move up from 39 to go grab one of those guys to pair with their brand new quarterback. I think that's their biggest need once you get past QB.
Yeah, they did add Adam Thielen. Terrace Marshall seems likely to be the number 2 wide receiver. So there's definitely both a need, I think, for a slot guy like Flowers or Addison, and a guy who can grow with whichever quarterback they take at the top. Buccaneers, obviously, they signed Baker Mayfield. They've got Kyle Trask. So the Buccaneers need a long-term answer at quarterback. That's probably the biggest need here, right?
There's no question that's their biggest need. The only other position that I had written down was perimeter wide receiver. Mike Evans is 30, and he's a bust for me this year. I'm nervous about him coming through with another big season. You're going to let your friends who recognize Mike Evans' name take him and draft him. You're not going to do it. I'd like to know what their plan is after Mike Evans, and they can go and address that in this draft. They're not going to do it in round 1, but they might be another team that goes with one of their day 2 picks and gets a wide receiver.
Yeah, Mike Evans is wide receiver 31 for me. I just did a rankings reset on the FFT newsletter. Interested to know if you have him higher or lower than that.
I believe I have him lower. I'm pulling up my receiver rankings now. I've got him at 35.
Yeah, it's just, unless Kyle Trask is better than expected, or Baker Mayfield, I don't know, turns back the clock to his second season or his rookie season, I guess.
Rookie season, really.
It's pretty hard to get excited about him. So, yeah, let's move on to the Falcons before we move on. And obviously, they've got Desmond Ridder, who was, started the last couple of games of the season for them. Sounds like he's going to be the starter moving forward. This is a team that needs a long-term answer at quarterback unless they really believe in Desmond Ridder. I could also see them going with a running back here. What do you think?
I think I get where you're coming from with the running back, but I don't know if they value running backs
Sure.
The same way that other teams might, or that other, people on the outside, fantasy managers for one, might. You think about putting Bijan Robinson in that backfield, and you can get really, really excited about what his numbers could be. I don't know what they're going to do. They're a wild card team. I think that a lot of their needs are on defense. And I actually think their defense is getting better this offseason, but they can really add some depth for the long term there. I've got quarterback as their biggest draft need, but I don't know if they're actually going to take one. I think they're really going to give it a fair shot with Ritter, let him be their guy for this year, and then they table that decision next year.
All right, that's going to do it for FFT in 5. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about the biggest draft needs for the AFC South. We've got the draft coming up in just under 2 weeks, so we'll see you then.